Welcome to the question of the day. Today's question is from Carrie in Wisconsin, and Carrie asks, I have a low performer on my team. I've been working with them a long time, and there doesn't seem to be any improvement. What do I do? That's a great question. And actually, I'm going to take this question and I'm going to use the opportunity to speak from two different points of view. I'm going to speak from the point of view of a sales leader, and I'm going to speak from the point of view as a salesperson, right? So as a sales leader, you're responsible to your team. You're not responsible for your team. Now, from the salesperson standpoint, sometimes you got to manage your manager. So what I want to do is I want to dive into what does it take to be successful, right? So as a leader, I'm responsible to my team, not for my team. So what am I responsible to? But then from the salesperson, sometimes I got to manage my manager. Sometimes I got to tell them what I need to be successful. And so let's speak from those two angles and meet in the middle. So it takes two to be successful. None of us can do it alone. There's some great examples out there of do it alone, but not truly as great as the dynamic duos, right? Think Batman and Robin. Think Shaq and Kobe, right? Like Shaq and Kobe are a good example. They both had successes separately, but they were never as dominant as when they were together. Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, same thing. Had successes separately, but never as dominant as when they were together. And so if you really want to be the best, like it takes two. It takes a great leader, but it takes a great executor as well. So the leader, John Maxwell says a great leader knows the way, shows the way, and goes the way. They're the ones that have the plan. They're the ones that have the big picture and the roadmap of how we're going to get there, right? They have the goal. They're setting the goals and the mini goals to get to the big goal. They're removing hurdles so that that salesperson can be successful. That's what a great leader is doing. Salesperson, on the other hand, they're executing. They're the ones that are going to execute. They're going to be the ones that fill in the gaps of how do you get there. So this is the plan and the goals. These are the things I'm really good at that we can squeeze in, or the things I need to get better at so that we can achieve this goal. You also have to define the plan. So as a salesperson, if you're going to be executing the plan, you have to have input in the plan. I've never seen anybody successful on a plan they didn't help create. You have to have some input because you're going to be the one being expected to execute it. And then once we have that plan, you're the one that's going out and executing it. So execute the plan. So there's six things that I see sales teams need for consistent growth and consistent results. So the sales leader is doing these things, and the salesperson, you're embracing these things, right? Because often when I see this fall apart, it'll be the sales leader is not doing these things. And it's always the same thing. We get pulled in different directions. We got too much on our plate. Like, and all that's probably true, right? But if we can figure out as a sales leader how to do these things, we'll be successful. And on the salesperson side, often I see we're resistant to these things. I don't need these things. I can do it myself, right? Like, but when you embrace these things, when you're open to these things, that's when we come together and we're most successful. So, first one is the ride along. It's the fastest way to identify opportunities, right? Get that second set of eyes. So think about the Belichick and the Brady example, right? Like they were really good together. Belichick was constantly that second set of eyes. Tom Brady knew what he was doing. He was a great quarterback, but having that second set of eyes to see things that Tom can't see, that's how they got better. And think about this too. So ride-alongs, fastest way to identify opportunities to get that second set of eyes out there to see the things you're not seeing. But often I hear, my salesperson, they are really good. They don't need me in the field. Think about Belichick and Brady. Who was Belichick spending time with the week leading up to the game? Was he spending time with Brady, or was he spending time with the second or third string quarterback? Yeah, he was spending time with Brady because there was more opportunity there. It was going to go further in the hands of Brady than the second or third string quarterback. And so he was spending his time with the person that was going to have the best opportunity to execute. Do you do the same thing on your team, or do you not ride along with them because, well, they're high performers? But ride alongs. Number two, training. Amateurs practice till they get it right. Professionals practice until they can't get it wrong. Training is when we define what success looks like, and we keep practicing until we can't get it wrong. This is how we stay sharp. If you're the sales leader, this is where you're showing what success looks like. You follow a process of I do, then we do together, and then you do. And I'm checking in to see that it's being successful in the field. And so training, we're constantly getting better. We're consistently doing those trainings every week to get better. Number three, one-on-ones. This is where you talk through things and usually you find your own solutions. Most times when I have a problem and I have my one-on-one with a respected leader, they don't have a silver bullet. They don't tell me how to solve my problems, but usually just by talking it out and saying, hey, this is what's working. Hey, this is not working. Here's my thoughts on it. And we talk through it and ask each other questions. Usually I figure out the solution myself. At one-on-one, this is your opportunity to do this as well. So talk through what's working, what's not working, what solutions do we have? There's a great book called The Coaching Habit by Michael Stanier. And that book shows you don't have to be an expert to be a good coach to execute a one-on-one, right? You don't even have to know anything about the field. But if you just ask questions and get talking, usually the person themselves, the salesperson in this case, they already know how to be great. And so it's having that one-on-one, that conversation. Number four, debriefs. So after we execute a sales call, we're debriefing, we're huddling together, we're examining in the moment. There's two things we're examining. How do we keep this one moving forward? Because a sale's never dead until the customer buys somewhere else or buys from us. So it's just stalled. So how do we keep it moving forward? What's our follow-up going to be? When are we going to follow up? How are we going to follow up? What's the reason going to be that we're following up? How do we get this thing moving again? So we're strategizing that in the debrief, but we're also strategizing, was there anything I can fix before I go to the next call? This is how you stay sharp. You stay sharp in the game. Because if we wait till the next training, that's after the game. And it's too late. This is exactly what you see in the NFL. You see the quarterback and the coach, they huddle after every drive. They get together and they're talking about what's happening in the game and they're making adjustments because after the game is just too late. So debriefing after the call. How do we keep this one moving forward? And how can I fix something so I don't carry it into the next call? So debriefs. A daily huddle. Daily huddle. How do you win the year? Well, you win the quarter. How do you win the quarter? Well, you win the month. How do you win the month? You win the week. How do you win the week? You win the day. And that comes down to a daily huddle, setting expectations around each day because each day is a new game. And then once we set those expectations, we have to communicate throughout the day. That's us knowing the score, keeping the score. When we know the score, we know whether we're winning or not. And I guarantee you, if you set expectations like this is what we need at the beginning of the day, and then you keep communicating throughout the day, all right, we got some here, some here, some here. At the end of the day, when you're that close to crossing the finish line, and that last guy's going into that last call, he knows he can be the hero. If he gets this sale, that'll push the team across the finish line. Everybody wants to be the hero. They're going to dig in. They're going to deliver value. They're going to identify objections. They're going to push the team across the finish line to win the day. Everybody wants to be that person that wins the day. So daily huddle every single day. And the last one, the sixth one, this all centers around a goal. All of this contributes into a goal. The North Star, what are we focused on? What are we moving towards? And then that goal should have a definition, and you're probably familiar with SMART goals. So that goal should be specific. It should be measurable. It should be achievable. It should be relevant. It should be time bound. Now, I like smarter goals, not just SMART goals, smarter. So I had an on the end. The is employee accepted. So that means the employee is bought in on the goal. That's that part where you, as the employee, the salesperson, you're giving your input to the goal. You're not just accepting a goal. You have input because then you accept it. Now it's our goal. And the R is revisited often. That's those one-on-ones. You're checking in to make sure we're not going into the ditch. Because once you're in the ditch, it's too late. But if you're starting to drift towards the ditch, we can correct. We can pull ourselves out before we get in the ditch. So having a smarter goal. So if you're doing these 6 things and you are communicating clear and often, you will be effective. One of my mentors, Eric Bowles, he says, I've never seen a highly productive, highly confused team. If you're doing these things and you're communicating clearly, you will be successful because you won't be confused. All right, so let's shift gears a little bit. What do you do as a leader if you're doing these things currently and we're still seeing no results? We're still below that minimum standard. Well, it's probably time for a PIP, a personal improvement plan, or sometimes a performance improvement plan, a PIP, right? So it's the PIP is saying performance is not where we need it to be. First thing I would say is most companies don't know where they need to be. I ask, what is your minimum standard? And 9 times out of 10, a company can't answer that question. You need to have a minimum standard first. It's that line in the sand of what it takes to work here. It's that line in the sand that if sales performance is below this for a determined amount of time, no matter who it is, we would walk them to the door. Could be termination, could be exiting that role, whatever that means, right? But they would not be allowed to sell here if their performance was below this for whatever time we determine. And you set that up. I mean, that's your call. You define what that minimum standard is. But as a company, it's the lowest performance that we can take and still have somebody in that role, regardless of who it is. Because when you have that minimum standard, now we have a guide of what it is, what that price is to work here. To be a salesperson here, you at least have to be performing X for this long. So you need to have a minimum standard. And when that performance dips below that minimum standard for whatever set amount of time, that's when a PIP comes in, a performance improvement plan. And a PIP is fair to both sides. Because think about it, as a company, you need your salespeople to produce. It's not fair to the rest of the company. There's jobs at stake here. There's lives at stake. If we keep an underperforming salesperson out there too long and it sinks the company, that's not being a responsible business owner. And as a salesperson, you know where you sit, right? No one. I've never met anybody that wants to get out of bed and just suck, right? But I have met people who get out of bed and they don't know that they suck because it's never been communicated to them. I'd much rather know where I sit. I'd much rather have that clear communication because then I can do something about it. The most painful terminations I've ever sat in on are the ones where the employee didn't even see it coming. They had no clue. And in those situations, it was usually the leader never communicated, never let that employee know what the minimum standard was or that they were below it. And they got blind. How fair is that? So here's what a PIP is. A PIP really, if you simplify it, a PIP is a goal with teeth. That's all it is. It's a goal with teeth. If I'm setting a goal, I'm going to say exactly what the expectation is. I'm going to say this is what the leader is going to do to support that person. And then this is what the salesperson is going to do. And when the leader and the salesperson do these things together, we'll hit that expectation. It'll happen. That's what a goal is. The only difference is a PIP has some teeth to it. So a PIP does the same thing. It lays out exactly this is the expectation very clearly. This is what the leader is going to do to support you. This is what the employee is going to do to achieve those results. This is the time we need it achieved by. And if we don't achieve it by that time, then something happens. That something could be a lot of things. That something could be termination. Maybe you don't work here anymore. That something could be a different role. Maybe this person is a good fit for the company. They're just in the wrong seat. I worked with a company one time. This guy knew everything about HVAC. He'd been doing this like 40 years, but he just couldn't sell. He just wasn't good at sales. Now, the great fit for the company, though. They did not want to lose this guy. So what they did was they shifted him into a system designer role so they could have other salespeople who are good at selling but don't have the HVAC knowledge that he has. They could call him. He would help them design the systems because he was an expert at that. So they kept him in that role, supporting the rest of the team, and it made their team wildly successful. But, he exited because of a PIP. He wasn't good at selling. Sometimes a PIP leads to restricted privileges. So if we are not seeing performance in this area, we will lose these privileges. I work with a company that just recently they had an employee that was not doing follow-up, was very poor at follow-up. And so they put him on a PIP for follow-up, and they laid out exactly what was expected. Leader's going to do this, employee's going to do this, and by this time you'll have this performance in your follow-up. And the teeth of the PIP was you're not going to get any fresh leads until you close a follow-up. And so that person lost the right to fresh leads. So whatever it is, but a PIP is a goal with teeth. This is what the expectation is. The leader's going to do this to support you. The employee is going to do this. And by this time, we will hit that expectation. And if we don't, some action will take place. That's what a PIP is. So there you have it, Carrie. Whether you are the sales leader, whether you are the low performing employee, it's a team effort. But when we do these things together, amazing things can happen. So as a sales leader, you need to support your team in that manner. As a salesperson, you need to let your sales leader know what you need. Because when we do these things together, great things happen. That's today's question of the day. Follow me, give me a rating on major streaming platforms. If you have a question, reach out to me either on social media or email. Both are listed in the show description. Let's get it answered. And if you're a Nexstar member, schedule a call with me. Let's address this one-on-one. Let's get to the root of your specific situation. I'm Coach Chris. We'll see you tomorrow.